belt of water. It keeps the Europe from going into a deep freeze. It's starting to stall. This year, they're predicting London and the UK is going to have the coldest winter in decades. Things are happening, and we got to do something about it.
Look what the kids are doing. Gary, look what the children are doing. You know, when I grew up, the issue was the Vietnam War, to stop that war. And there was a cultural revolution in the United States about that war, which, of course, now the people who made it admit that it was the biggest mistake. But now the young generation now, their issue is climate and preservation of the earth. That is what they're concerned about. And I trust that with their passion and their vigor and their social media savvy, they're in touch with each other. There are millions of young people on board. They're lying down in the street. They're protesting. They're confronting the leaders of the world. And this is their issue. And I think that if anything can move the dial, it's going to be them. They're terrific. They're really, really articulate, educated, intelligent, thoughtful, and they're not shutting up, and they're going to be voting.
Yeah, well, I hope they vote the right way, because I tell you what is going on. You know, this is not a political show, but I'll tell you what is going on in our country right now. I've never seen anything like that in my 67 years.
We've never seen anything like that, and also the vulgarity of the public discourse, the low-life way people speak, the humiliating people in public. It's very disturbing. Who behaves like that? And yet, apparently, this is exciting, and a lot of people love it. And I think it's great. But I'm sure that you teach your grandchildren, and their parents teach them that this is not how you treat other humans. We have to make public schools places where they teach children how to be human.
Well, I think compassion is gone, at least in this country. When you travel around the world, I mean, I'm sure some of the third world countries have more compassion for their family members and people in general, don't they?
There's no comparison. Most of them are much more communal than we are. But you see, there's objection to even using words like third world, because that is a superior colonial way of referring to other countries with other people.
Yeah, you're right.
They take care of their own. I want to tell you something. We just came from Cuba. And, Americans think that you can't go to Cuba now. Yes, you can. I just came back. My husband and I were just there. And they have nothing. When I say nothing, they have nothing. We've been blockading this country for 60 years for no reason, because we're going to change their regime, but it doesn't work. And a lawyer makes $30 a month. It's very expensive, by the way, like in Havana. It's very expensive. A lawyer makes $30 a month. We met a pharmacist, $15 a month. So they have to have other jobs. They have to work in a hotel. They have to do something to be able to live. But I looked at that, and we went all over the country, and we spoke to so many people. And here's the deal. They have free medical care. Everybody gets medical care. They have free education for everybody. And every Cuban citizen has a ration card. Now, it's not gourmet food, right? But they get rice and beans and coffee, whatever. But nobody is without food, because there's a ration card for everybody. And we just ramped it up. There's nothing in the American press. I tried to write articles for publications. Nobody cares. We have just ramped up the blockade. I was there 2 weeks ago. That's when it was going on, and it's still going on. And the United States has put pressure on any country that is bringing oil into Cuba. So there was no oil coming in, no gas, no oil, which means they were closing schools early, businesses, banks, everything to save electricity. You had to sit online, sit online in your car for 5 hours to get gas. And there was no end in sight. And also, Cubans are no longer allowed to send as much money to Cubans in the United States can't send as much money back to Cuba. So it's hurting the Cuban people. You would think that they would be so depressed, and they're not. They roll with difficulty. they say, we've been through worse before, and they keep laughing and they keep going on with their lives, and they will not be defeated in terms of their joy in life, their families. They're very, very communal, and they're all extended families. And we had dinner in people's houses. One family, they have nothing. And now there's a shortage of chicken, a shortage of rice. What did they do? We were guests. So they made chicken, and they found rice, and there were vegetables, and we drank rum. And I just came back here and I said, look, they do not have freedom. The young people want freedom. But I can understand why a lot of the older people support the regime. They told me that before, their families had no access to education. They were poor. They didn't have enough to eat. They had no medical care. Now they have all of that. And we're trying to kill them. I mean, it's just, I didn't know what to say. They love Americans, by the way. Love Americans. They don't love our, government, but they love Americans. They were so happy to see us. I don't know. It really makes you think. If somebody in the United States now, I don't care who the candidate is, I don't care which party, if someone talks about everyone having access to free education, they're treated like they're monsters. If someone talks about free medical care, I interviewed, I would say about 30 or 40 young people and asked them, young working people, and asked them, what's your medical insurance like? None of them have it. They said it was $1,300 a month, $1,400. They couldn't afford it. So we're the richest country on earth, and I just came back from one of the poorest countries on earth, and nobody was unhappy. I mean, they have problems, but there was no depression. There was nobody walking around bemoaning their fate. They adapt. And I came back, and I haven't had time to process what we experienced there. And the things that these poor people have to take for granted, they have medical care. I talked about medical care, education, food. If someone talks about that in the United States, they treat them like some kind of extremist lunatic.
Oh, they do. I mean, for an average person, even my age, okay, little quick story. We got a mini farm at my compound, and I got my studio here and all that. Well, back in June 16th, matter of fact, one of the goats got out, a male goat, a big one, and it decided to attack me, and it knocked me to the ground. I was fine that day. The next day, for some reason, I couldn't keep my balance, so I fell 4 times. And,
wow.
And I did some major damage. I still, I can't even walk. I have to use a walker, and I can walk maybe 30 feet a day.
Wait a minute, from a goat tripping you?
Well, what happened is the next day I started losing my balance because of the initial fall. I must have had a little concussion or something happened. So, the next day I took
terrible.
I took 4 major falls. I go to the hospital a couple of times. The paramedics had to, take me down because I have a huge staircase. I couldn't walk. I had both legs sprained. My ankle was sprained. My back was.
No, this is awful.
My back was sprained in 2 locations, and then one of my tendons in my knee was severed. Okay, and I need to go get an operation. Well, I have insurance and I have Medicare, but even with the insurance and Medicare, I talked to the doctor. How much is the surgery going to be? We're talking a couple $100,000. It's crazy.
It is absolutely unbelievable. But so are you getting good medical care?
I put it this way. I'm getting around with a walker, and when I'm not because I refuse to use a wheelchair. I got a nice office chair. I scoot around the whole house, but I have not been, other than to the hospital, I haven't been out of my house since June 16th.
Oh, this is unbelievable.
Now, I'm 67 years old, and again, I had our budget. We've had 8 children. Some of them had financial difficulties, but to sit there and you go and talk to the surgeon and the hospital, and they say, well, yeah, you need the surgery. It's going to cost this amount of money. Your insurance is going to cover this, and you're looking at, oh my God, that doesn't leave much for me to live on to the day I die.
So you have an audience you can impact people. You have to talk about this. This is absolutely unconscionable. First of all, I'm just wondering, why did you lose your balance like that? Do you think you had a concussion or?
I think I had a slight concussion, and I didn't realize it because when I originally got knocked on the ground, I hit my head. But I felt when I got up, I felt pretty much normal. But the next day,
and you have not gotten your balance back.
Well, I can't stand long enough to find out if my balance is back. I can stand for 2-3 minutes at a time, and that's it. Again, like I said, I can use a walker, and I can go 20, 30, 40 feet. That's it. And then I have to, that's it for the day. I mean, it's a long process.
How awful.
Yeah.
This is outrageous.
But, what I'm saying is not just me. I know other people that, that know my story, that they're like, in their 60s, they're retired. They had enough money to live comfortably till they figured out, what their life expectancy is. But then all of a sudden, one of them, the wife or them, or have medical conditions, it can destroy your financial everything, and you're going to live.
That's correct. That is correct, and it is shameful. It is absolutely shameful that the corporations just keep getting more and more thrown at them, and people. It is unbelievable, and I don't understand that we belong to a species that's. Do you remember the car, the Edsel, that they took off?
Oh, yeah, the Edsel. My dad had one of those. Okay,
I think that the human species is an Edsel. It's like it's a defective species that turns on its own. I'm not kidding. I'm very optimistic, but I think that the human species is really defective, that people vote against their own self-interest, that there's no, you said, compassion, just taking care of people. Okay, here's something that happened in April. We were in Girona, Spain. It's in Catalonia. It's a fabulous area in northern Spain. And my husband got a kidney stone. And I think we've been together a long time. I think he said 1 or 2 before. But this time, I was very alarmed. He was getting worse and worse and worse. And I rushed him to the hospital. And the kidney stone was so large, and it went into his bloodstream, and he was in septic shock, and he needed surgery. And emergency surgery. And I said to the surgeon when he came out, I said, well, he's not going to die, is he? And the surgeon said, yeah, he may. It was a nightmare. So he had 9 days in the hospital. He had 2 surgeries. He had 10 days of outpatient antibiotic. He had CAT scans and every test you can possibly imagine. He had doctor visits. He had radiologists and everything. And when the bill came, they were so apologetic. They didn't even know how to do it because any European has free medical care. They didn't even know how to bill us, and Medicare just abandoned us. I mean, there was nothing. They have this thing. It's called World Blue Card or something like that. They're useless. Useless. If you're traveling out of the country, Medicare covers nothing. Nothing. You're not covered at all. And our secondary, it was impossible with our secondary. Long story short, they were so apologetic. And after all of this, we had to stay there 2.5 months. My husband's absolutely fine now. And the bill came, and I was horrified. I said, oh, my God, what are we going to do? The bill for everything was $6,000.
Oh, God. You could imagine if in this country you would have been talking maybe.
We priced it, and it was something like $250,000 here. So I wrote an editorial for the newspaper here. And I said that we would like to propose a meeting between patients and doctors.
Now, hey, Judie, we're going to
find solutions. Not attacking doctors, not attacking anybody, but let's do a solution-oriented meeting about how they're going to get the pressure off the doctors who are spending their lives paying back for medical school, their loans. Let's see what we can do to make medicine affordable for people, getting pressure off the doctors, and making it accessible and affordable. And I wrote an editorial. I said, my husband and I would be happy to host a community meeting if any forward-thinking medical facility, meaning like hospital, right, would just have it on their a property, and let's